In 1980, China was one of the poorest countries in the world. Its economy was smaller than Brazil's, and its GDP per person was even lower than that of Haiti. Most people lived in small villages, working the land with simple tools. There were few cars, few factories, and very little modern technology. Foreign companies saw China as a distant land of bicycles, rice fields, and old traditions. But something unexpected was about to happen. Over the next few decades, China began one of the greatest transformations in human history. Today, it is the second largest economy in the world and a global leader in technology, trade, and infrastructure. Chinese cities shine with tall skyscrapers, high-speed trains, and innovation centers. The country produces more engineers every year than the United States and Europe combined. China has lifted more than 800 million people out of poverty, a record never seen before in modern times. How did this happen? How did a country once so poor become such a powerful global player? That's what we'll explore in this story. We'll walk through key moments of China's rise, from its early reforms to its economic boom, its new cities, and the birth of a strong middle class. And as you listen, you will not only learn about China, you will improve your English step by step. So sit back, listen closely, and open your mind. This journey is about growth, change, and possibility. If this story catches your attention, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. This way, you'll join us every week to discover new stories while improving your English. Let's get started. In 1976, Chairman Mao Zedong, the founding leader of the People's Republic of China, passed away. His death marked the end of a very strict and controlled period in Chinese history. For many years, Mao had focused on political campaigns like the Cultural Revolution, which left the country deeply divided and economically weak. Factories were not productive, farms were disorganized, and people had little food or freedom. China needed a fresh start. That change came with a new leader, Deng Xiaoping. He was not as loud or charismatic as Mao, but he was a visionary. Deng believed that the country could only become strong if it opened up to new ideas, modern technology, and international trade. One of his most famous quotes was simple but powerful: "It doesn't matter whether a cat is black or white, as long as it catches mice." In other words, results were more important than ideology. In the late 1970s, Deng introduced a new direction for China. He called it reform and opening up. For the first time, farmers were allowed to sell their crops in local markets. People could start small businesses. The government began to reduce its control over the economy. China was still a communist country, but it started to act more like a market economy. These early changes were small, but they gave people hope. Villages that once struggled to feed themselves suddenly began to grow more food and earn more money. At the same time, the government began to look outward. It wanted to learn from the rest of the world, especially countries like Japan, South Korea, and the United States. Foreign experts were invited to visit China and give advice. Chinese students were sent abroad to study science, engineering, and business. Slowly, China began to open its doors. This was the beginning of a new era, one where China would no longer stay isolated. Deng's leadership marked a turning point that would guide China toward growth, strength, and influence. In the early 1980s, China took bold steps that changed the country forever. One of the most important moves was the creation of special economic zones, areas where foreign companies could invest, build factories, and test new ideas. These zones were like windows to the outside world. The first and most famous one was in a small fishing village called Shenzhen. At the time, Shenzhen had fewer than 30,000 people. But with new policies and investments, it quickly transformed into a modern city with millions of residents and one of the busiest ports in the world. These reforms encouraged competition and rewarded hard work. For the first time in decades, People had a chance to build a better life for themselves. Farmers could sell their crops. Shopkeepers could earn profits. Entrepreneurs could launch small businesses. Slowly, money started to move through the system, and people had more choices: where to live, what to buy, and what to study. Foreign companies also began to notice China's potential. They saw a large population, low labor costs, and a government willing to support growth. Companies from Japan, the United States, and Europe began building factories and forming partnerships in China. This helped transfer knowledge, technology, and training to Chinese workers and engineers. As more cities opened to trade and development, China's economy began to grow quickly. Roads, bridges, and airports were built. Industrial zones expanded. Millions of people found new jobs in factories, offices, and service industries. In just a few years, China went from being a closed, poor country to a rising economic force. People who had once struggled to find food were now saving money, buying homes, and dreaming of better futures. The reform era was not only about economics, it was about changing mindsets. Chinese people started to believe that progress was possible. And with each step forward, China moved closer to becoming a modern, global power. By the 1990s, China had earned a new name around the globe: the factory of the world. This title didn't come by accident. It was the result of smart planning, hard work, and a focus on building industries. Foreign companies saw China as the perfect place to produce goods, clothes, electronics, toys, tools, and more. Labor was cheap, workers were disciplined, and the government was ready to help with infrastructure and policies. Factories appeared everywhere. In just a few years, quiet towns became busy industrial centers. Cities like Dongguan and Guangzhou filled with workers, machines, and smoke from production lines. People from the countryside moved in huge numbers to these cities, searching for jobs and a better life. Sometimes they lived in small dorm rooms and worked long hours, but they stayed because they believed in the future. At the same time, China joined the World Trade Organization, WTO, in 2001. This was a big step. It meant China had agreed to follow international rules for trade, and in return, other countries opened their markets to Chinese products. The result was explosive. Suddenly, Chinese-made goods were everywhere, on shelves in the United States, in stores in Europe, and in homes across Africa and South America. This export boom changed the world. Prices for many everyday products became cheaper. Companies earned more profit. And China collected money than it used to build more roads, railways, airports, and ports. These profits also helped create a stronger banking system and new opportunities in education and technology. But it wasn't just about business. This period gave millions of Chinese people their first chance to earn steady income. Families saved for their children's education. People bought their first cars, their first apartments, and even took vacations. A generation that had once lived through poverty was now stepping into the modern world. China's role as the world's factory was not only about producing things. It was about producing change, economic, social, and personal. It was the foundation for what would come next. As China's factories multiplied and its economy grew, something extraordinary began to happen: its population started to move. For centuries, most Chinese people had lived in rural areas, working on farms and living in small villages. But now, millions of them were leaving the countryside behind and heading to the cities. This was the largest human migration in history. People moved for work, for opportunity, and for a better future. The government supported this movement by building new infrastructure at an incredible speed. Highways, subway systems, and airports appeared across the country. New apartment blocks stretched toward the sky. In just a few decades, China built cities larger than many entire nations. Shenzhen, once a sleepy town near Hong Kong, became a global tech hub with more than 12 million residents. Shanghai became one of the busiest ports in the world. Beijing, already the capital, was transformed with modern buildings, massive roads, and a new subway system that continues to grow each year. Cities like Chengdu, Chongqing, and Hangzhou rose in importance, each becoming engines of innovation in business. This wave of urbanization changed people's daily lives. In the cities, people found new jobs not only in factories, but in restaurants, hotels, offices, and technology firms. Children attended better schools. Hospitals and universities expanded. Access to education, healthcare, and digital tools improved. But the growth also came with challenges. Traffic jams, pollution, and crowded housing became common problems. Yet even with these difficulties, most people agreed, life in the cities offered more possibilities than ever before. With determination and energy, people adapted. They worked hard, saved money, and invested in their futures. Urban China became a symbol of transformation. Skyscrapers, shopping malls, and high-speed trains painted a picture of a country that was no longer just rising, it was running forward at full speed. And this rapid urbanization laid the ground for China's next step, becoming not just the factory of the world, but a leader in global technology and innovation. As China's cities expanded and its economy matured, a new ambition took hold, to lead the world in technology. No longer satisfied with only making products designed by other countries, China wanted to create its own. This shift, from manufacturing to innovation, became the new national goal. In the early 2000s, the government began investing heavily in science and technology. Billions of dollars were directed toward research centers, universities, and startups. Young people were encouraged to study engineering, computer science, and artificial intelligence. Technology parks appeared in major cities, offering support for new companies with big ideas. Chinese entrepreneurs rose to the challenge. Jack Ma founded Alibaba, an online shopping platform that grew into a tech empire, connecting millions of businesses and customers. Pony Ma built Tencent, a company behind WeChat, an app used by over 1 billion people every day to message, pay bills, shop, and play games. Huawei became a global leader in 5G networks and mobile devices, competing with the biggest brands from the West. Innovation extended into many areas. In transportation, China developed the world's largest high-speed rail system. In energy, it became a leader in solar panels and electric vehicles. In fintech, Chinese people could pay for almost anything using just their phones, far ahead of many developed countries. Behind this progress was a new generation of thinkers and doers. Young Chinese programmers, designers, and engineers brought fresh energy into the tech world. Universities improved their rankings, and more Chinese students returned home after studying abroad, ready to build the future. This rise in technology also changed everyday life. In cities, people ordered groceries online, booked taxis with apps, and took classes through live streams. In rural areas, farmers used drones to check their crops and apps to sell their produce. The digital economy opened doors in places that had been left behind. China's focus on innovation showed the world that the country was not just catching up, it was starting to lead. From smart cities to space missions, China proved that its future would be written not only in factories, but in labs, startups, and classrooms filled with ambition. As cities expanded and technology advanced, life for millions of Chinese families began to transform. A new middle class was rising, one of the largest the world had ever seen. These were people who had stable jobs, higher incomes, and hopes for a better life. They were no longer just surviving, they were dreaming, planning, and building. In the past, many Chinese families shared small homes and focused only on basic needs. But now, they were buying their own apartments, traveling on vacations, and saving for their children's futures. Shopping malls, restaurants, and entertainment centers began to appear everywhere. Brands from around the world entered the Chinese market, offering choices that once felt impossible. Education became a top priority. Parents spent their savings to send their children to good schools, and some even sent them abroad. English classes, music lessons, and sports became part of daily life for many students. Education was no longer just about getting a job, it was about becoming global citizens. This new middle class also changed the way China looked and moved. Car ownership increased rapidly. Millions of people who once rode bicycles now drove to work. Airlines added more flights as more Chinese tourists began to explore the world, visiting Europe, Southeast Asia, and the United States. For many, it was the first time seeing life outside their country, and they brought those experiences home with them. The internet played a big role in shaping this generation. Social media gave people a voice. Online platforms allowed them to share ideas, follow trends, and create communities. Young people started their own businesses, became influencers, or built careers in digital marketing and design. The middle class wasn't just growing in numbers, it was growing in creativity, culture, and ambition. Of course, this growth was not equal for everyone. Some areas of the country moved faster than others. But the general direction was clear: China was becoming a society where more people could live comfortably, think about the future, and make choices for themselves. The rise of the Chinese middle class changed the story of the country. It created new dreams, new lifestyles, and new voices. It was no longer just about building a strong economy, it was about building a strong society. As China became stronger at home, it began to play a bigger role abroad. Trade had already helped China grow, but now, the country wanted to build deeper connections with the rest of the world. The goal was clear: not just to export goods, but to create partnerships, open markets, and expand influence on a global scale. One of the most ambitious projects in modern history was launched in 2013. It was called the Belt and Road Initiative. This plan aimed to build roads, railways, ports, and digital networks across Asia, Africa, and Europe, just like the ancient Silk Road. The idea was simple: connect countries through trade and development. For many nations, especially developing ones, this meant new jobs, better transportation, and access to Chinese investment. Chinese companies began working on infrastructure projects in dozens of countries. They built highways in Pakistan, railways in Kenya, and ports in Greece. These efforts not only supported local economies but also gave China a new presence around the world. It wasn't just about business, it was about building long-term relationships. At the same time, China strengthened its role in global organizations. It became more active in the United Nations, the World Bank, and regional partnerships in Asia. Chinese leaders met with presidents, prime ministers, and business leaders across continents. The message was always focused on mutual growth, respect, and cooperation. Trade continued to be one of China's strongest tools. The country exported everything from electronics to clothing to medical supplies. But it also became a huge importer of oil, food, technology, and luxury goods. As its middle class grew, so did demand for foreign products. This gave other countries new chances to sell their goods and services to Chinese customers. Tourism also became a form of diplomacy. As millions of Chinese people began traveling abroad, they brought their culture, curiosity, and spending power with them. Restaurants added Chinese menus. Hotels hired Mandarin-speaking staff. Chinese visitors became a welcome part of global tourism. Through trade and diplomacy, China moved from being a follower to becoming a leader. It was no longer just learning from the world, it was shaping it. And with every new deal, every project, and every handshake, China continued building its global presence, one connection at a time. With its cities transformed, industries modernized, and economy rising, China looked to the future with a clear vision. This vision was called the Chinese Dream. It was not just about personal success, it was about national strength, unity, and renewal. The dream was to make China a fully modern, developed country by the year 2049, 100 years after the founding of the People's Republic of China. The idea of the Chinese Dream became closely linked to President Xi Jinping, who took office in 2012. Under his leadership, the dream became more than a slogan, it became a national mission. It focused on two main goals: eliminating poverty and turning China into a global power in technology, education, and innovation. One of the most important achievements of this period was the final push to end extreme poverty. In villages across the country, local officials worked to improve roads, build homes, and connect people to markets. Millions of families received support to start small businesses or move to places with more opportunities. In 2020, the government declared that it had reached its goal: no more extreme poverty in the country. It was a powerful moment and a major milestone in China's story. At the same time, China continued to build its space program. In 2019, it became the first country to land a spacecraft on the far side of the moon. Chinese astronauts, or takonauts, prepared for long missions in space, and plans were made for a permanent space station. These missions were more than scientific, they were symbols of China's global ambition. The Chinese Dream also focused on pride and cultural identity. Museums, books, films, and festivals celebrated Chinese history and values. Schools taught students about the country's journey and goals. Many young people grew up with a strong sense of national pride, believing they were part of something much bigger than themselves. Yet the dream was not just about the country, it was also about the individual. People were encouraged to work hard, keep learning, and contribute to society. The message was clear: if China succeeds, its people will succeed too. This dream of national renewal continues to guide China's path. It is a dream of strength, stability, and unity. A dream built not in one day, but over generations, through effort, sacrifice, and belief in a brighter future. China's journey from a poor, rural nation to a global power is one of the most remarkable transformations in modern history. It didn't happen overnight. It was the result of decades of planning, discipline, and determination. And behind every number, every policy, and every skyscraper, there were people, ordinary people who believed in progress and worked hard for a better life. There are many lessons the world can learn from China's rise. One of the most important is the power of long-term vision. While many countries change direction with each new leader, China has stayed focused on its goals. From the early reforms of the 1980s to the technological boom of today, every step has been part of a bigger picture. This patience and consistency allowed China to grow steadily, even through global crises. Another lesson is the importance of investing in people. China understood that education, skills, and health were key to national success. The country trained millions of engineers, doctors, teachers, and scientists. It expanded universities, improved public health, and lifted millions out of poverty. When people feel supported, they can contribute more to society, and China made that a central strategy. China also showed how opening up to the world can bring huge benefits. By connecting with global markets, the country gained access to technology, capital, and ideas. It adapted fast, learned quickly, and created its own solutions. Today, it exports not only products, but also innovation, expertise, and leadership. Of course, China's path is unique. Every country has its own history, culture, and challenges. But the core ideas behind its rise, planning for the future, investing in education, embracing change, and building strong infrastructure are lessons that can inspire nations everywhere. For individuals, the message is just as clear. Progress takes time. Big dreams require small steps, taken every day. Learning a language, building a career, or improving your skills is no different. It's about staying focused, even when the results aren't immediate. Just like China's rise, your growth is possible with effort, consistency, and belief. As we look back at this incredible journey, we're reminded that transformation is always within reach. Whether it's a country or a person, great change begins with a single decision: to keep moving forward. China's story is far from over. Its rise has already changed the world, but the journey continues toward new technologies, new partnerships, and new dreams. From quiet villages to glowing megacities, from bicycles to bullet trains, from isolation to global influence, this transformation has shown what is possible when a nation believes in its future. But now, it's your turn. You've just followed one of the most powerful stories of growth, challenge, and success. And just like China, your path to improvement is also a journey. Whether you're learning English for school, for work, or for your own goals, the most important step is the one you take today. Progress doesn't happen in a single moment, it's built word by word, lesson by lesson, choice by choice. So keep going. Keep learning. Keep building. If this story inspired you, click like so we know it helped you. Tell us in the comments, what part of China's story did you find most impressive? The reforms? The technology? The unstoppable will to improve? And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories that will not only inspire you but also help you practice and improve your English. Together, we will grow one story at a time. Do you want to improve your English 20x faster? Whether it's grammar, conversation, or fluency, we have the perfect material for you. Click the link in the description or the first pinned comment and take your English to the next level.